Okay, thank you, Alan. Hello, fellow Toastmasters. Um, so, how is it better to communicate? Is it better to communicate face to face, or better to communicate online? That's what the topic of my talk is going to be about today. I'm going to do a little bit of contrasting and comparing on online communicating with face to face. And I'm not talking about speeches or formal type of communication. I'm talking about just general back and forth communication that you get when you want to talk about how to do something, or if you've got opinions and you're kind of maybe arguing about that, or if you're just hanging out with your friends and you just want to have a little chit chat. So when it comes to the first of those two things, how to do something, as in maybe you've got a project you're getting on with, or you're talking about your opinion on something, a lot of my friends have said actually that online isn't such a great idea. Because when you're typing, then it's quite easy for a lot of miscommunication to happen and for arguments to develop. I'm sure you've seen it if you've got Facebook or any of those where you get in the comments, somebody says something and someone reacts badly, and then that person has to react badly again, and you end up with this argument that goes on forever. And I think what's happening there is that people are misunderstanding what's being written there. And for some reason, the communication or the social norm to go, okay, let's make here and argue actually that I find it easier to communicate online with text, and I'll explain why. So when you are in a face-to-face situation and somebody says something, you don't have time to come up with a solution. You have to respond. And quite often, if you're feeling emotional and you're feeling that little bit of anger, you have two options. The first one can be, and this usually happens with family or people that you're very familiar with, is you express that anger. And perhaps you say something that in hindsight, you didn't really want to say. Or the second option that you could use is, and this is usually with people you're not so familiar with, you'll say something placating to keep the peace. So both of those situations, with that one, you might feel like, well, I didn't really get my point across, and I didn't fully agree with them. Now, if you're online and you see something that you disagree with, you can have that little rage and maybe shout at the air, but you don't have to type straight away. You can have a little bit of time to think about it and say, okay, so this is an issue. Let's think of something, of a way to write this that's going to A, placate things, but also make my point clear. So that's the first reason. The second reason that I really like online communicating is I struggle a bit with social communicating when people are talking all at the same time. I don't really know when to speak. And quite often I'll find I'll start to speak and someone else will start to speak. And usually I'll find that people are listening to that person, or I'll just be quiet so they can speak. It's something that women might experience especially. It's perhaps a societal thing. If a man and a woman start speaking at the same time, it's been shown through studies that people will defer to the man and look at the man more than they'll look at the woman. So maybe that's something that we need to work on as a society. But nonetheless, the internet or typing messages on those sort of communication chat things can help to somewhat solve that issue. Everybody can type. You can be typing at the same time as someone else, and you'll get the same amount of space on that screen as everybody else. So I think it can help to break down some of the barriers of social communication in that way. Okay, so that's all very well when you're talking about how to do something or when you're doing opinions. But how about if you just want to hang out with your friends and you just want to have a chit chat and have a laugh? And this is where I think typing really just doesn't cut it. It doesn't matter how many emojis or pretty pictures of dogs you put in. Nothing quite cuts it like having a giggle and the facial expression. And thankfully, we are gradually getting there with internet. We have these Skype and Zoom and Jitsi for people to be able to still go online and to be able to kind of get the gist. People can giggle, people can express themselves through their faces. It doesn't solve it completely, but it does mean you can be with your friend in America or in Australia and be able to have that giggle. It's great. So I think especially now we're beginning to see the power of the internet as a mode of communication. But I don't think we should forget the unique power of being gathered together in one space, handing over a packet of crisps, and all the other things that you can do when you're together with a group of people. Thank you everybody for listening, and I'm going to hand you over to Susan.